Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Eric Mackey,
And I'm Christine Downs.
and we are trainers for Northeast PBIS. We're going to be talking about avoiding power struggles. The content for this training was developed by Northeast PBIS and the Center on Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. In this module, we'll be providing you with a way to understand and respond to when people around us, such as students, start escalating in their undesirable or unexpected ways. But remember, anyone can experience conflict and challenging behaviors. So these practices can be applied across multiple relationships, such as student to teacher to teacher, etc. In looking at how to manage power struggles and crises, we're going to focus on a few key strategies, such as ways to intervene early when we start to notice a student escalating so that they don't need to reach a crisis point, ways to rearrange the environment around a student to reduce the need to reach a crisis point, ways that we can provide students with alternate behaviors that they can use to meet their needs in appropriate, functional ways. And in another video, we'll discuss ways we can develop neutralizing routines that can help reduce the chance that we are contributing to a student's escalation and reduce the chance that we might provide consequences that are inappropriate to the situation. So let's start with an example that you may have seen play out in a school. Jason, please turn in your assignment.
What assignment?
That assignment you didn't finish during class?
Oh, I finished it.
Excellent. Please turn it in now.
Oh, I don't have it with me now.
You have a choice. Turn it in or do it again.
You never believe me. I did it. I just don't have it.
Sure, I believe you. I guess you made the choice to do it again, though.
Make me.
That's disrespect. You need to go to the office.
F you.
The teacher moves closer and puts his hand on Jay's shoulder.
I pull away, glare, and raise my fist as if to strike.
Well, that escalated quickly. We went from Jason not turning in an assignment to him swearing at his teacher and raising a fist. Did we really need to get to this point?
So how do we prevent our staff from engaging in power struggles?
That's an excellent question. Just like students, the adults need strategies. Most of us know when a situation with a student is escalating, but it can be tough to know the right way to respond to a student as they're getting worked up. We're going to go through a model that allows us to assess where students stand in their escalation and which provides us with some handy tools we can use at each stage of the process. Here is our overall crisis escalation and de-escalation continuum. As you can see, we start with a calm state, which is low with regards to behavioral intensity. Once a student is triggered, his or her behaviors become increasingly more intense until the peak, which some may call a crisis state. Once the crisis is over, you see the behavioral intensity decrease, but it doesn't immediately disappear. It takes time to decrease back to a recovered and calm state. Of course, we really don't want to get back to a peak or crisis state, so we, as adults, really want to focus on intervening in the first 3 stages, which we'll go over next. When a student is calm, he is generally cooperative, takes feedback without issue, and ignores distraction. It's during this stage that we want to provide praise, maintain a solid classroom structure, and arrange the environment to reduce the chance that the student will get triggered. It's when students are calm that we should take time to preventatively teach coping skills. It's tough to teach a coping skill in the middle of a crisis. So we want coping skills like deep breathing or taking a brief walk to be taught, practiced, and reinforced in advance. When a student is triggered and becomes agitated, it's because something in the environment, whether immediately apparent or not, has upset the student. You may see the student become unfocused, start and stop tasks, and start talking with peers. We want to intervene as quickly and calmly as possible before the behavior escalates. If you can identify the trigger, or sometimes what we like to call the antecedent, like a peer who's teasing or some challenging math work, you can likely rearrange the scenario so that the situation doesn't continue to escalate the student. The best strategy is redirect the student back to what the student is expected to do at that moment and includes reasonable options for successful behavior, such as moving to a different seat, ignoring the peer, or trying the first three math problems. 2 or 3 options should suffice. It's important to note that we shouldn't rush the students to make their choice. They may need a moment to decide what they're going to do. Once they make an appropriate choice, we should make sure to provide praise in a format that is rewarding to the student. Hopefully, our interventions at the earlier stages work, and we can avoid further escalation. Sometimes that's just not an option, so it's helpful to know what to do if the crisis progresses. As a student starts accelerating towards peak or crisis, her behaviors become more focused, but not in a way that's desirable. She may start arguing, questioning, crying, avoiding, making threats, or engaging in light destruction of property. At peak, the student may attempt to harm herself or others, destroy property, or both. It's important to note that as a student progresses along these stages, she is less and less rational as she starts to enter her fight, flight, or freeze state. So the more escalated a student is, the less likely she is to be able to respond to attempts to engage her in conversation, answer questions like, "What's wrong?" or respond to multiple commands. At these stages, the focus is on safety. You want to start thinking about your crisis training and what protocols you're supposed to follow in times of behavioral crisis. You'll want to think about limiting the amount of stimuli that could be triggering the student and reduce the chance of someone getting hurt. So you may need to have the student leave the room, or you may need to clear other students out of the room. You can continue to provide the student with choices, but they should be concrete and few in number, such as, "Right now I need you to either drop the scissors or hand them to me safely." As always, we should praise any form of compliance. At any stage, but especially these stages, we need to make sure that we, as the adults, are staying calm. Otherwise, it's easy for students to register our behaviors as challenging or threatening. Once the crisis or peak is done, you'll notice the students' behaviors become less intense, but they're not quite at baseline either. It's important to manage these steps just as carefully as we do the earlier stages in order to prevent escalation back into another peak. The student may present as embarrassed or shy away from others. Once the crisis has passed and the student de-escalates and moves into recovery, you'll typically see the student reducing in his level of agitation, but still be somewhat disengaged. He may attempt to deny what has happened, minimize it, or blame others. He might also try to anxiously overcorrect for what has occurred. However, you'll also notice the student becoming increasingly more compliant to concrete directions. It's important, especially as a student is de-escalating, not to attempt to get the student to accept responsibility or apologize. This is not the time to start talking about consequences. These efforts could likely re-trigger and re-escalate the student. Instead, focus on giving the student time and space to calm down and to start complying with simple directions and tasks. Once a student has shown that he is calm and compliant, then you can discuss consequences and process the incident with students in a form of debrief. Such a debrief should help the student to make connections between his triggers, feelings, and behaviors. The debrief should also be an opportunity to identify and practice a new strategy he can use when presented with similar triggers. As noted before, it's our job as the adults to maintain calm rather than feeding into students' chaos. But this is also true for any relationship, whether it's teacher to teacher or student to teacher, etc. As some may say, fighting fire with fire is not an evidence-based practice. However, fighting fire with water is. Just like our students, we need to have strategies in place to manage crises and power struggles. Our instinctual reactions during times of stress are to fight, flee, or freeze, none of which are really helpful in the situation of a student conflict or crisis. So we want to have some practiced strategies that are more functional for these situations. These strategies hopefully help us to remain or regain calm so that we can think clearly in how we're helping students to manage their big emotions and behaviors. We'll talk more about this in the Neutralizing Routines mini lesson. Thank you for taking time to learn about how to reduce power struggles and how to support students at each stage of a crisis. As a team, Take time to discuss the extent to which avoiding power struggles is or could be an issue at your school. Also, identify systems for providing professional development and coaching support to your staff as needed on this content. Be sure to take time to update your action plan as appropriate. For more information, please check pbis.org, nepbis.org, or contact your local trainer.